Okay, so sorry, everyone can see the screen, right? So, Santosh ma'am, is the screen visible? Okay, it would be still better if you speak up, but okay, no issues. So uh, yesterday we were talking about um, models and how they are used to create tables and entries inside databases. Right. So we will be basically expanding on that idea today. So before we do that, uh, let me just do one more thing here. Yeah. So yeah. So now I'll be creating. So today we'll be learning about um, model relationships. Like for example, when you create tables and one table is related to other. Okay. In the similar way, models can be related to each other using keys and other stuff. And there are, I guess, many to one relationship. There's, I guess, many to many relationship, and there is one to one relationship. Right. So before starting to code, I'll basically give a brief uh, let's say explanation about what these are. Right. So first of all, many-to-one relationship is that many objects can be related to a unique object, right? And when I say object, you need to understand that that object is unique, and no other duplicate object can exist, right? This is the first condition. All right. So many-to-one relationship basically says that many objects, when they are related to a single object, right, a single unique object, that is called many to one relationship. For example, let's say you people have used Flipkart, right? So let's say uh, the one relationship, the one entity we are talking about is you. All right, and the many would be here, and the many would be your orders. All right. So a bunch of orders can be related to you, right? And every order is unique. Let's say every order is unique. It has a unique primary key which makes it unique, right? So every sorry, so a bunch of orders can be related to you, all right? And you can be related to a bunch of orders. This is what many to one relationship basically means, that a single object, in case of this example, you can have many other objects related to it. All right, but the the order will have only one object related to it. All right, this is a very difficult way to understand. So let me just show you the image. Many to one relationship. Go to images and yeah. All right, so this is the one entity, and this is the yeah, this is the one entity, and this is the many entities. Give me a second, let me just put that on mute. Yeah. So this is the one entity, and this is the many entities. This is the same example we were talking about. Right. So one customer can have many orders, but a single order can have only one customer. Right? So this is what uh, many to one basically means. All right, and we'll move on to many relationship. Right? It's a easy example that we can understand. Hmm. I guess this is understandable like this. Let me just open it. This is size and then you can just right. So as you can see, these are classes and these are students. All right. So one class as in your lectures, one class can have a bunch of students in it, right? And each student can have a bunch of classes, all right? So for example, so the introduction to jazz, you can see it is related to 1001, it is related to 1003, and it is related to 1004, and like that. Both to many relationship, all right? So in a nutshell, many to many basically means that the let's say parent instance can have a bunch of child, and a child instance can have a bunch of parents, right? So this is basically many to many relationship, and then the third one is one to one relationship. This is very difficult to show. Yeah, we can talk about this. We'll take the example. Right. Each person can have a single passport. There cannot be multiple passports. You only have a single passport. In the same way, a passport can have only a single person related to it. Right. Like a person cannot have multiple passports. Multiple passports cannot have the same person. Right. This is what basically one to one means. So coming back to here. And today we'll be talking about many to one relationship, because once you understand it, you can basically understand the other stuff. Before that, let me just see if there's a tabular representation. Many to one tabular structure. Does this have this? Yeah. As you can see, this is what it will look like. There will be a customer table which will have the column customer ID and the name tag, the name field, and then there will be a different table. You need to understand that this is a different table, and this is just an instance of the table shown here. All right. So there will be a customer table where there will be a customer ID and a name, let's say, and then there will be a order table where there will be a order ID and let's say a bunch of stuff like the things you ordered, and then there will be customer ID. Right, this customer ID from the customer table will be a copy of the same data will be stored here, So this will establish a many-to-many relationship. Right. So when I will call, let's say, all the orders of customer A, let's call it customer A. When I need to find all the orders of customer A, what it will basically do is get the customer ID from the table, and then go to the order table and get all the customer IDs that have the same ID of the customer we are finding, and filter those out. Right. So this one is pretty easy to understand. The problem is the many to many, because there's an intermediate table involved here. Hmm. I guess this can understand using this. Yeah. So there's a student and class relationship. As I explained it earlier, a student can have a bunch of classes, and a bunch of classes can have the same students, right? So here, how this is stored is, let's say this is the unique part. All right, the student ID, the class ID is the unique part. So to connect these, uh, another table is formed. This is called an intermediate table. All right. So when I call, let's say, all the classes of a student one, all right. So what it will do is it will go to this table. All right. It will look for all the uh, examples where the student ID is one, and then it will fetch the class ID for us, and then it will go to the class ID, and it will go to the class table, and then convert those class IDs into their names using this table. All right. And the vice versa is also possible. Let's say I need to find out the names of all the students that are taking a class. So I will put in the class name, which will be converted to class ID. It will go to this table, the intermediate table. It would filter out all the instances where the class ID is, let's say, one, and it would take the student ID of all of those students, go to the table here, and then convert the student ID into student objects and return that object to us. And I guess one-to-one is pretty easy, and there's only a unique restriction that needs to be applied, but I yes. Okay, the one-to-one structure is pretty similar, but the student ID is unique to the is unique in the other table. All right. So the student ID here is 12345. The contact ID is 12345. It cannot be same anywhere. All right. So you will just set the student ID to unique, which would basically make it a one-to-one relationship. All of this is done by uh, Django in the background, so you don't need to do that. You just need to basically initialize those fields. All right. So we'll be talking about how to do that. All right. So let's say we are working on a to-do list, but let's say every single user has a different to-do list. All right. Not everyone has a common to-do list. Every user has a different to-do list. Let's call it list, because to-do list is a lot to speak up. I'm going to close this and we'll go back. Yeah. So it's the same thing we did. I will just call it class user. I'll inherit from model.models. This is the important part because it adds a bunch of stuff. And let's say the user has a name. I will tell you how to create a official user and basically log in with him and other stuff in later classes. But for now, let's pretend that this is a user class, right? So he'll have a name, he or she will have a name. It should be a character field. The max length would be 255. Names can be long, and I'll say default is equals to new user, and we'll set null is equals to false because we cannot register without a name. Like, then do we need any other field? Should we do any other field? We can do email models dot email field max length 255. We do not need a max length for email, right? It does that all it's on its own. It's no issue, and we'll add a string object, a string and a function, so we can sorry, we'll say return self dot name. I'll just call it name so that I don't have to go again and again using caps lock, not caps lock, shift. Yeah, now the only change you have to do is basically add another field here, and I'll just call it user is equals to models. Now, as I talked about it, I'll just write it here. Give me a second. When it's sorry, when it's many to one, it is a foreign field. And it's many to any relationship, it is many to many field. I'll just show you what I'm talking about in a minute. If it's 1 to 1, anyways, be 1 to 1, right? So think about it. A user can have a bunch of to-do lists. To-do list is a mouthful. We'll not do that. Can have a bunch of lists, a lot of lists, but a list can have only a unique user. So we'll just give it a many to one relationship. So we'll just say foreign key. Okay, so this is foreign key and the others are foreign these fields. No problem. Okay, foreign key. Now the important parameters here are, first of all, the first parameter is what it is related to. All right, it is related to our user. We'll just name it something else because user is a Django class and it will put in a lot of confusion for us. Username. All right. And the second is the on delete. All right. Now, what this on delete basically means is, let's say you delete the user from the database. Let's say he deactivates his account. So what happens to his related objects? All right. So I'll say basically models dot cascade. Right. All right. So what this does is, if I delete the username, it would basically delete all the lists related to it, and this is how we want it. Let's say we were making a newspaper app, all right, and this was a reporter object, and this was the article object. Let's say we fire the reporter, but for that, if we do that, we do not want all of his articles to go away. So we'll change this to something like, say, set this to none. All right. So, but if a user removes himself, we need all of his list to go away because this makes sense, right? And we have the string field here, so we are done setting up, all right? So I'll be using the shell command here because otherwise I'll have to run this over and over again. It would be a lot of trouble. All right. So we are inside the shell. I'll just import. I'll have to say from dot models import to do list. What is with this thing? Okay, yeah, it was main dot model. I choose this was the same mistake yesterday, and it's called main, right? Yes, it's called main. So we'll just call it main. Give me a second. Maybe I'm using the wrong. Okay, yeah, I'm using the wrong directory. This was another project I was working on. I have to go back. I'll have to basically say to Python. I was working on a different project and I was in that directory. So that is why it did not work. So now it should work. Python manage py shell. Models. In line 4. Okay. I did not add that, but I don't know who did. But okay. Okay, before that, we have to do another thing. We'll have to go Python manage dot py p might be stuck. So make migrations, right? You have to do that every time you make any change to the models thing, all right? Make migrations, make spelling errors, make migrations. And it tells me that the user is without a default field. I added a default field, right? Okay. What is going on today? User to-do list without a default. I have a default here, otherwise it's giving me an issue. Go ahead and please select a fix. Yeah, I'll just say do it yourself, no issues. I'll just say user. So, and it will be off my back. Give me a second. It's not gonna user object. Okay, it's talking about this one. I was uh, meddling with the wrong one. I'll just say none. Playing with the wrong one. So this will create the migrations and migrate. Mhm. Not null constraint failed. Okay, that is the issue. The other objects we have do not have uh, don't have a user object. That is the issue. I will have to create new objects. I would say run server for now and remove those because the problem is they do not have this user field, right? Because they do not have a user field, when I create changes, it tries to create changes to the existing ones, which creates an issue. So I'll just admin, not admin, it was this. Uh, this was the password. I will have to remove these lists because okay. So I'll just comment it for now. Call it me. That will generate an error too. Migrations again, and migrate once again. So I hate making changes because it breaks everything. And manage your PY line 18 main utility execute. Let me tell you what is wrong with the. You know what? I'll just what can I do here because I cannot look at the other and tell what's going on. Main dot to do list dot user ID. You know what? I'll just look at it this way. I'll open the database, which is here. Here, I should have made those changes earlier because it basically messes with the system. And we have to go to main.todo list. And it has the ID, it has the status. Authenticated user. The new table has not been created. So what's the issue here? Hmm. We just read it null, not null constraint failed. Where the not null constraint failed to. To-do list, user ID. There's nothing. You know what? I'll just call it username and I'll call it new user. And I'll just call it new user here and I'll try to migrate it. Migrations. Make migrations. You migrate this now. You know what? I'll just look this up. Give me a second. You know what I'll do is basically remove this thing, remove this, and then try to make migrations again. What is the I'll just do to-do list because it's getting me a lot. The terminal, that's the make migrations, and I'll go to admin. Paste this again here, and I'll use name model dot foreign key. This would be new user, and on delete it would be models dot make the migrations now. Okay, I'll just look this up. I don't know what this is. You know what? I'll just do this. I'll is equals to 2. Just null is equals to 2. Convert this to 2 as well. And convert this to 2 as well. This is repeating a lot. Make migrations can alter the fields, migrate this. I can figure this out. because it would not show me what is the issue. I'll go to the base thing. I'll go to the this. I create a new user. Name is model. The field is this. I created this. I altered this, and I altered this. Okay, you know what? I'll just flush this entire thing. I'll just say Python h.py flush. It should flush the entire database first. Yes, and I'll remove this. And here from the migrations. Yeah, now it works. Yeah. I don't know what the issue was, but I had to remove the entire database for that. Alright, so now I can go Python manage.py shell like this. Then I'll go from main.models import new user, and from main.models import to list me. Import, not import. All right. So yeah. First of all, I'll create a user. It would be a new user. I'll just call its name my username, and I'll just not give it the email. And like we did, we can do this. Right. So we have created a user. Now we can basically uh, new list. We can basically connect it to our really long name, and I'll just call it title equals to new description to new description. Status is Okay, status works. Default is true, and username is equals to user, and that should work, right? New list dot save. Yeah. So I created my first ever relational database, and I'll show you how this looks like right now. And this class could be a little longer because of the constant issue we're facing. So don't worry about that. You will get back the time you lost. No issues. Yeah. And we have a new user and apply. So we'll first look at the new to-do list. All right. So this is the ID, this is the title, description, status, and date. We saw that earlier. But you can see the username ID is generated here. Right. We called it just username here, but it calls it a username ID it by itself because it's a foreign key. All right. And if we look at the new user, there's no extra field. There's an ID which is auto-generated, there's name, and there's email, which can be null, and I've set it to null. All right. So this is what a many to one relationship basically looks like. Now I can show you many to many, but this could break the system again. So I would not be doing that because as you can see, any change here in any of those fields, like if you've used a database using SQL language, you realize that editing or updating a database table, not database, a table. Database cannot be modified. If you update a table to have a new field, it basically creates a lot of problem. You have to make a lot of changes. All right. So these changes caused a lot of trouble to the extent that I had to delete this file. Right. But anyways, moving on. Now I can go something like new list dot username, and it gives me the new user Arjun, which I created right here. Right now I can do something like, right. So this was give me a second. I have to reply to a message. Hmm. All right. So this is what I did, and now I can say something like, and as you can see, this returns me a username. All right. So now I can say something like dot name. All right. And this will give you the name, and I guess it will, when I say email, it will not give me anything because that is null. Right. So that is pretty understandable. Now this is one method to go about it. What I did was I went from child to the parent. Like I'm accessing the child to go to the parent. Right. Now you can do this the other way around, and I'll just show you how you can do that. Let me just create some more list. New list is equals to go up, and I'll make a few changes here. New new list description and a user, and I'll just say dot save, and I'll create another one, call it another list, and give it a description of another list description and statements. Alright, so when I call something like to do list, dot objects dot all. To-do list is called to-do list new. Yeah, so I have 1, 2, and 3. Right, so I have three things. All right, so now I can say something like, let's say I have a user, let's call it user. Okay, so the user stored. All right, now I can say something like user dot. Now what I'm doing is I'm going from parent to child. Right, I'm going from up to down. Earlier we saw from child to parent. That is accessing the child to go to the parent. Now what we'll be doing is going from parent to the child. Right. So I'll say user dot, and then as you can see it says to do list. All right, but we'll just call it to do list new. Right. Now this is to do list new. Uh, Here it was capital. Here it will be small. Right. All lower cases. Uh, Here it was camel case. Here it would be all lower cases. I'll say set, and I'll say create. Right. And then I'll say title is equals to user list. Description is equals to user. I'll just call it parent to child. Right. And I guess we do not have to pass in anything because I'm just calling it like that. And I press enter. Okay, there's supposed to be a comma here, not a full stop. Right, so now I created a new user, new list. All right, so now I can go something like dot all, and as you can see now there are five, four. Yeah, now there are four lists, and this is a newly created list. Right, now this time we did not need to pass in the where is it? Where is it? Yeah, we did not need to pass in the username parameter. All right, why is that? Because I called it using a parent. All right, so it knows where to add it. Sorry, it knows who the username is, who the parent is. All right, and I forgot to basically store it, so I cannot access it again. So I cannot show. So I'll just basically do list is equals to do list dot objects dot, yeah, and I was talking about the other way to create an object, right? What I showed you is what I showed you was this, but what it actually is, it is dot create. Okay, this is the other way to create an object. All right. So in the earlier method, in let me just go up. In this method, you have to run two commands. That is create a user, create an object, and then save it. But if you use this method, you will not have to create a new object. Sorry, you will not have to pass in the object to the other variable, right? And you can just create it without calling save, right? So this is a one-way method. That is the two-way method, right? You have to run two commands there, but here you will have to run only a single command, right? So the last one is called to-do list new command, and I'll just call list, and I've got the list. So I can go list dot username dot name, and I'll get the name. All right. So I can go from parent to child, and once I get to child, I can again go back from child to parent. Right? So you can do all of that. and there are a bunch of other stuff. Because yeah, and you can do something like, let's say we have a user with us, right? Yeah. Now you can say something like user dot, what's it called? Um, to do list new underscore set dot all. Like now this gives us all the users, so all the to-do list with the object user. Now you see these four objects, and this is because there is only a single user in all of the articles that we, all of the to-do list we created, all the lists we created are connected to this user. All right, so I'll just say user 2 for now, and I'll go new user, and name, let's do all this, and I'll just give it an email. All right, choose test at gmail.com, and user dot save. Like this method better because it will then let me play with the entire object. All right, so now I'll say user2 dot to do list dot underscore set dot create, and I'll say title is equals to user2, description is equals to user2 generate it, and I'm missing some other, no, I'm not. Called to do list new again. Like so I created another user, and I associated a list with it, right? So now when I say dot objects dot all, you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But now that I say something like user2 dot to do list new underscore set underscore set dot all, I get a single object here only, because only this one has the user, has a username user2, right? So this is what many to one relationship looks like, and this is how you use it. All right, I'll just exit it, and I'll show you this. I'll just type in the syntax. All right, to go from child to parent, right? So you basically go, you get the object first, child object dot foreign key, foreign key variable, so you can understand it better. Dot uh, the operations you want to do. All right, it basically supports almost all the operations you do uh, in general methods, like the create one, the all one, and all of those. It supports all of those. All right, so when you want to go from the child to the parent, you basically go child object dot the foreign key variable. In this case, the foreign key variable was this. All right, the child object can be anything. In our case, it was list one, list two, etc. And then the foreign key variable, which is this one, and I'll just say operation for now, right? And then the operation what you want to do. But if you want to go from parent to child, you have to go parent object I'll just put in let's go here. So this is parent object dot um, model name in lower case underscore set. Correct. Now I'll remove them here because this will create a confusion. Dot operation. All right. Now you basically call the parent object, and then you do this. All right. This is very crucial. You call in the model name in all lower cases. Right. So you will call to-do list new in all lower cases and underscore set. All right, this will remain the same. What this basically does is it fetches us all the it fetches us the this set query set associated with the parent object, and then you can perform the operations on it like all filter and stuff. Okay. So there are a bunch of these. I'll share the documentation with you and go through this documentation. And apologies for that slight mishap right here. All right, I do not know what this is, but this happens when you basically play around or mess around with the tables, because when you add something to the table, the so some of these constraints are not met, and those new constraints uh, create a lot of conflict. And it was resolved as soon as I created an entire new database which did not have those fields there, those tables there. Okay, so apologies for that too, but so play around with this. This was an example of many-to-one relationship. I could have shown you many-to-many relationship, but that would have cost us a lot of time because that would basically create a new table, and creating a new table would lead to a lot of errors, because of which I would have to flush the database again, delete the file, and redo the entire file. Right? So you can experiment with it, and I will share the documentation with you. Yeah, because in the starting of the course, I told you you need to go through the documentation. You need to be able to read the documentation so that you can understand what is going on. Right? Because there are a lot of parameters that cannot be explained in all of these cases. So, right now, for example, models have a models have a parameter called choices, right? But I could not find a proper use of that choices field. So I basically did not go through it, and there are a bunch of other fields like maximum length, minimum length, and all of that. You can go through that in the documentation, and you should by now be able to read documentation and understand what the documentation is trying to tell you, right? And because Django is a very vast framework, going through that documentation is one of the only ways to understand what is going on, unless you buy a very thick book, which is a totally different case. So yeah, this was basically models and tables, and today I basically went over table relationships or model relationships in this case, right? And there was one more thing. Yeah, about the assignment, I have created an assignment. Like most of you must have seen that. So you need to submit your create web page, your display web page, your views file, your models file, and there was another thing. You can find it in the description. I do not remember that. You need to create a zip of all those files and submit it to me. If any one of you has any issue with that, you can contact me. And if you want me to make an exception with the due date, for example, you have exams going on or a lot of problems go on now, go on nowadays. So if you want me to make an exception for the due date, you can contact me. And the due date is tomorrow. I guess I'll push it to Friday for now. Okay, so I'll push the due date to Friday today. And you guys should start with the assignment, and uh, along with this assignment, you should start working on your project because only 2 weeks are left. And I guess that's it for today. After Santosham takes your attendance, you guys can leave. Thank you very much.